An elderly woman, dressed in simple clothing, stepped into a bank to open an account. But instead of being welcomed with respect, she was brushed aside and looked down upon.
What no one realized.
She wasn't just any regular customer, she was actually the bank's largest shareholder. What followed left everyone stunned. Stay tuned until the end for a powerful lesson. And, before we continue, drop a comment telling us what time it is where you're watching from. An elderly woman entered a grand bank located in the heart of the city. She wore loose-fitting, modest clothes and a pair of worn-out sandals. Her hair was pure white, her face lined with deep wrinkles, yet her eyes held a quiet calmness. Slowly, she made her way toward the teller's counter, carrying a small, weathered bag filled with documents. She stood patiently, waiting for her turn before stepping forward. The bank teller, a young man dressed in a sharp suit, barely glanced at her before shifting his focus back to his computer. With a quiet sigh, he showed little enthusiasm for assisting her. The woman, unfazed, smiled warmly. "Young man, I'd like to open a new account." This time, the teller gave her a proper look, scanning her from head to toe. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face before he finally responded. "Are you sure, ma'am? This type of account requires a large initial deposit. Maybe a different account would suit you better?" Still composed, the elderly woman replied, "I have all my documents ready." The teller sighed again, shaking his head slightly. His tone grew firmer. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this account is designed for financially active clients, people with steady incomes or high transactions. If you're only looking for information, you might want to visit the customer service desk instead." Some people nearby took notice. While some ignored the situation, others exchanged whispers. The woman stood still for a moment, no anger, no frustration, just an unreadable expression on her face. Without another word, she turned around and quietly walked out of the bank. No one had any idea that within a few hours, this very moment would shake the entire institution. As she stepped outside, she felt no bitterness, only disappointment. Not because she was refused service, but because of how she was treated. Throughout her life, she had learned that respect was one of the most valuable qualities a person could show. And yet here, she had been dismissed simply because of how she looked. A sleek black luxury sedan waited for her outside. A well-dressed man quickly stepped out, bowing slightly. "Apologies for the wait, ma'am. Your car is ready," he said, holding the door open. Without a word, she got into the car and took out her phone. With a few quick taps, she sent a short yet powerful message. Upstairs, in the bank's executive office, a senior official's phone buzzed. The moment he saw the sender's name, his face went pale. His hands trembled slightly as he read the message. Who just refused to serve an elderly woman downstairs? The room fell silent. Executives exchanged uneasy glances. The branch manager, who had received the same message, immediately stood up, his face growing tense. The bank's largest shareholder had just walked in and had been turned away. Meanwhile, downstairs, the young teller remained oblivious, continuing his work as if nothing had happened. He had no idea that his actions were now being discussed at the highest level. Minutes later, the same black sedan pulled up in front of the bank once again. This time, the elderly woman stepped out, carrying herself with an air of quiet authority. She was not alone. Two well-dressed men followed close behind, one of them the bank's executive director. As she re-entered, the energy in the room shifted. Employees who had been busy with their tasks suddenly fell silent. Murmurs spread as people tried to grasp what was happening. The branch manager rushed out of his office, his face stiff with tension. He forced an uneasy smile as he approached her. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding earlier. We didn't realize." The woman simply raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Her gaze remained gentle, yet there was undeniable authority in her presence. She then turned toward the young teller, the very man who had dismissed her earlier. The teller stood frozen, his face drained of color. In a calm yet firm voice, she spoke. "I believe I need to have a conversation with the CEO about how we treat our customers." Silence. No one dared to say a word. In that moment, everyone inside the bank understood. This was a lesson they would never forget. Word of the incident spread quickly to the bank's headquarters. Senior executives wasted no time, calling for an urgent meeting. Within hours, both the branch manager and the teller were summoned to the boardroom, standing before the elderly woman, now seated at the head of the table. Both men lowered their heads. There was nothing extravagant about her appearance. No luxury, no grand displays of wealth. Yet, everyone in that room understood. Her influence far outweighed any expensive suit or fancy title. Taking a deep breath, the branch manager finally spoke, his voice soft. "I deeply regret our actions. We didn't know who you were, but that's no excuse for treating a customer poorly." The woman met his gaze with kindness. "It's not about who I am," she said gently. "It's about how we treat everyone." Her words echoed through the room, leaving a profound impact on every person present. In the days that followed, the bank's policies changed. All employees were required to undergo customer service training, centered around one core principle: every customer deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or status. This story became a valuable lesson for many. The woman had not sought revenge. She had not demanded punishment. She simply proved that true power does not come from wealth or position, but from the way we treat others. She showed the world that strength isn't measured by status, but by the dignity and respect we show those around us.